Hi, I'm Brien Lundin, and I am at the Toronto Metals Investor Forum, kind of a pre-DAC event here before the big PDAC mining conference. I have the great pleasure to be talking with Tyrone Docherty, who is the principal of First Tellurium, which is a new recommendation in the Gold Newsletter portfolio, one I'm very excited about, one I'm very excited to be a shareholder of. And especially as we're having these sessions here, Tyrone, because I've already seen you captivate the crowd a couple of times in talking about First Tellurium. So you're in for a treat here, gang, when we hear Tyrone talk about this. But to kind of summarize the opportunity, and the way I summarized it for the Gold Newsletter readers, is imagine if in today's world of supply chain disruptions and China dominating so many critical elements, if there was one that sometimes comes into the public vogue, but typically is in the background, not a lot of people know about it. And there was one little junior mining exploration company out there that was perhaps not only the best play on that critical element, but maybe even the only play on that critical element in the world today. And that's First Tellurium. So tell us a little bit about the two projects you have and that market opportunity, if you will.
Thank you, Brian. Well, we got two wonderful projects. A very advanced project in Canada called the Deerhorn project, which is a high-grade gold, silver, tellurium property, which we've now also uncovered a copper porphyry there, which we haven't talked about. And the other property is a super high-grade tellurium property in Colorado that used to be owned at one time by First Solar.
Which is a primary user of tellurium in the world today, I would say.
Yeah, right? Most of the tellurium now is going into cadmium tellurium solar panels, which First Solar makes. There are some people from China that use silica, but the U.S. government is pushing the solar panels being made by First Solar for obvious reasons. And as a CEO of First Solar said about 14 months ago that with the opening of gigawatt factories in 2024, their own demand for themselves can be somewhere between 900 to 1,100 tons a year, which may not mean anything, except you realize the world supply is 600 tons a year.
Right.
And 60% of that comes from China.
Yeah.
And with the U.S. administration wanting to stop a lot of these imports of critical metals coming from China, the crunch is going to be absolutely astounding. And then you throw in the latest creation from the University of British Columbia, where they have a patent on the lithium tellurium battery, which is far superior to a lithium ion battery. So when that comes to market, you're going to have at least two industries that are going to be going after suppliers of tellurium, and we are the only junior on the planet that's doing it. And that was done for a reason. Why I didn't want to invite competition.
Yeah.
Why we're looking at all these other minerals. So I think we're sitting really, really good. But as I mentioned, it's both properties have high-grade gold as well. So we're sitting there pretty good.
Yeah, and tellurium, you have that global production. That global production right now is almost exclusively as a byproduct of other metals production, which is important in that higher prices for tellurium won't necessarily increase production to meet that supply shortfall. And what is really missing from the market are primary tellurium deposits.
Yeah, 90% of tellurium in the world comes from copper refining.
Yeah.
10% comes from in situ mining, such as we have at both Colorado and British Columbia. So we're sitting there very good. As a matter of fact, for your audience, First Solar in 2012 did a conference in Cologne, Germany, and they highlighted 4 potential suppliers of tellurium in the world from in situ mines. One was in properties in China, one in Mexico, our property in Canada, and one in Sweden. And they said at the conference they didn't trust China, they didn't trust Mexico, which left Sweden and ourselves. And about a year after that conference, the Swedish company sold all of their tellurium. I don't know to whom. So that basically left us as the only one out there. And then we just picked up in the last 2 years the First Solar's own deposit that they looked at in Colorado. They had a 3-year worldwide tour, if you will, looking for potential suppliers, and looked at over 100 properties in North America, and sort of said the Klondike was their #1 project by far. And then they dropped it. And people say, well, it doesn't make any sense. And if you understand why they do it, and as you know, Brian, it's better to be lucky than good in mining sometimes. So things drop in your lap.
You need both.
Yeah, and I was told that at an annual general meeting of First Solar in either 2010 or 2011 that a couple of large investors stood up at the meeting and said to the board of directors, we think you're a bunch of hypocrites. You claim to be a green company, but you're involved in the dirty world of mining. So they decided they would drop the property and just buy tellurium off the market, end up being an extra 1 or 2 pennies per solar panel, but they could keep their chin up and chest out. So they sold it to their head of exploration, who formed a company and bought it from them, and that's who we optioned the property from. So as I said, it's worked for me before. The better to be lucky than good. So we like it.
And if I look at your board of directors and your advisors, it includes some of the top experts on tellurium in the world today. It also includes some, or one of the procurement or officers for First Solar when they had the project, right?
Yeah, well, that's how I build companies. I tell people, I'm not a geologist or an engineer. I'm just a businessman. I like to surround myself with bright people. So on our advisory board, I got 4 gentlemen that were with First Solar, 2 of their geologists, their landman that you were referring to that knows the properties, and also their vice president of metallurgy, who's one of the top people in the world for minor metals, which is important. And on the other side, we have a gentleman who is the CEO of Phoenix Advanced Material out of Canada, who's involved with the University of British Columbia on a new lithium tellurium battery. It was patented a year ago, and we're told it's far superior to a lithium ion battery. So that's another guy on my board. And our 2 QPs, our QP is Dr. Lee Grote out of UBC, professor at UBC, world-renowned geologist. He works with the governments of Japan and India as well. And a latest addition is Dr. Paul Spry out of Iowa State University, an Australian gentleman who's in charge of economic geology at Iowa State, and that's his department. But Dr. Lee Grote says that Dr. Spry is the foremost expert on tellurium in the world. So I learned at a young age, it's better to surround yourself with bright people. It helps you make the right decisions.
And your properties, they've walked some of the properties, and you have your current resource in Alaska is...
Not Alaska.
No, I'm sorry.
We got BC.
In BC, that's right.
Columbia,
BC, I'm sorry. But your current resource is not really constrained. I mean, you have kilometers of trend now that you've identified by walking the land position.
Yeah, no, what we did, our gold, silver, tellurium zone, which is separate from our copper porphyry, which we discovered, and separate from the tungsten, was historically 2.4 kilometers, and which for Americans is about 1.6 miles. And then our Dr. Grote just walked it with my chairman in October and added another 1.1 kilometer. Almost 50%. So we're about 3.5 kilometers. That's about 2.2 miles. And we've only, for our preliminary economic assessment we did in 2018, we only based it on 450 meters. So at the time was 20% of the zone, because we know we're sitting on something spectacular. So I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money to prove up what we already know is there. And so the preliminary economic assessment, Brien, in 2018 said we had a 1.6-year payback. It was a 42% IRR after tax. And that was based on $1,300 gold and 17 silver. So I think we know that it's even more robust now. And the key to, as we tell people, it was open in all directions. The average drill we went down was no more than 60 meters or 200 feet. So we know that there's potential to expand it quite a bit down below. And we just want to make sure that when money's tight, we don't go raising money at ridiculous levels just to prove something we already know is there. And the markets come back to us. And, if the U.S. government and Canadian government putting tellurium on their critical metals list, there's certainly opening opportunities to perhaps get some government help as well to move things forward.
And the next catalyst right now from the exploration end?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're interested. We just bought our own drill from a group in Alaska, brand new drill. We got a very good price on it. And the interesting thing that your shareholders would like to know is that we bought it. They insisted on getting shares of the company. They didn't want cash because they know the driller personally, and he's so high on our property. So it's kind of interesting that you get to tell people what you're doing, and it's someone else that's professional who can recognize it.
And, I know you're not happy with where your share price is now, particularly, but it was trading about a year or so ago at a multiple of the current levels.
Yes.
So at any point in time, this is one of the things I stress to my Gold Newsletter readers, when tellurium hits the headlines once again, and it's only a matter of time in my view before it does, first tellurium is going to be the story everyone's going to go to, and you can have that kind of a quick reaction in the share price at a moment's notice.
Well, if I may, I'd like to explain that situation because people look at a graph and say, what's going on? And I say, well, what happened is we started trading on Frankfurt middle of January last year, and we put out the news release about the lithium tellurium battery from University of British Columbia. and the stock went wild, especially from the Europeans buying. And then one day, a month later, it just fell off the cliff because I woke up one morning and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And it's because that was the morning that Russia had invaded Ukraine. So everyone in Europe started selling their paper, and I don't blame them. I would have done the same thing. So of course, people think, "Oh, there's something wrong," but not at all. So I went all the way down to 8.5 cents from 60 cents. And my wife, I think, got the cheapest one at 8.5 cents. But like, I'm the largest shareholder with my wife and myself. We don't sell. You look at the insider reports. We're successful in our last company, and we know we're sitting on something great.
Yeah, so you don't like the share price necessarily where it is now, and you see where it should be. But that's an opportunity for investors right now.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I say people, they say, "Should I buy it?" I say, "Well, I don't know if someone's a billionaire or a pensioner, and I can just tell you what we're doing." And the news releases kind of let people know where we're going. With our own drill, we did that on purpose so that, if mining gets hot, sometimes drilling companies are tough to get hold of, or their prices go out of the roof. So by owning our own, we can control that aspect of it as well. So this year we'll have a good drill program. And then next year, 2024, we expect to have a huge amount of drilling because we're going to prove up more of the copper porphyry and keep expanding the gold, silver, tellurium zone.
Well, I don't think we could leave it on any better note. So thank you, Tyrone. Very exciting opportunity right now. Again, a lot of factors in there that could quickly expand, quickly multiply the value of the company at any point in time. So it's a great opportunity at current levels.
Thank you for having me, Brien. Much appreciated.
Thank you.